I broke pretty much every professional and foundational rule when I quit my job, and now I'm taking yet another leap. Quitting isn't glamorous, and for a large majority of us, it's terrifying, and that's okay. And here's why I believe why that is. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Mike Lucas, and first off, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who, through the unexpected hiatus, has stayed with the channel, and then a big welcome to everyone who has stumbled across this video. This is just a quick story on why I quit my job, the 3 reasons behind that, and where I'm going to go from there. So, in keeping everything simple, let's dive right in. When people quit their job, there's usually a large variety of reasons. I quit my job over 3 main reasons that I'll get to later in the video, but then there's also a 4th reason that, if you'll stick around, I'll tell you what that is at the end, on why I felt I was ready and in a safe enough position to quit my job. So at the start of the pandemic, when we heard news of the Great Resignation with employees leaving their long-term companies or looking for new opportunities, I did not think I'd actually be a part of that statistic myself. I had graduated university in 2020, I had my bachelor's in business management, and I had just gotten a job in retail the month before I graduated. And then after just 1 year with the company, I was able to do a double promotion and become assistant store director. And that's kind of where it all went wrong. Now, this is just my opinion, but a lot of people tend to get stuck in this cycle of going from one job to the next and potentially becoming so enmeshed in a company that it's even more terrifying just the idea of leaving that comfort zone which has been that company for so long. If you're familiar with Robert Kiyosaki, then you would know that one of his terms for this is the rat race. And according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the rat race is defined as the unpleasant life of people who have jobs that require them to work very hard in order to compete with other people's money, power, status, etc. Now, I do want to make clear that I'm not disregarding the importance of hard work by any means whatsoever. And I also want to make clear that I'm not disregarding that working for large companies is also more than a viable option. People have different priorities, different things that fulfill them, and all of it is a personal journey. And so bringing it back to that personal aspect, this is what my story was behind it. I quit my job Monday, April 18th. And like I mentioned earlier, that's a scary leap for a lot of people, and for me it was no different. I was still terrified to do so. I spent a couple days actually going over how to give my 2 weeks notice. Would it be something that would drag out? Would I actually get to work my full 2 weeks? Or any other number of these issues. This is where the story begins, knowing that it wasn't my most professional exit from a company, given that I gave a sympathy card as my 2 weeks notice, which I will say now, I don't recommend doing. So if you are looking at giving your 2 weeks notice, don't do a condolences card. Just putting that out there. But this wasn't a decision that I came upon and just decided randomly that I would choose to quit my job. It was a slow build that I saw from the get-go and from just the culture that I was exposed to while I was working there. And it was accumulated into 3 main reasons. The first reason I had was time. This is my most finite resource, and for everyone else in this whole world, it is your most finite resource too. There is no way that you can bargain, buy, somehow scrape more time, because once that second is gone, it's gone. And for me, this is where a large part of that agony came from. And understanding that whenever you promote within the company or promote to a new role, obviously there's expectation that you will continue to work hard and give your best. The big problem that I had found with this was the 8-hour workday. And this goes back to 16th century Spain, where the 8-hour workday was to take into account the 24 hours within a day. And obviously, as we go throughout history, we can see after the Industrial Revolution how the 8-hour workday became a means of protecting the worker, a means of protecting the employee, so that way they aren't being taken advantage of from those they work for. And that obviously accumulates into 8 hours of work, 8 hours of play, and 8 hours of sleep or rest. However you want to do that. And my job was structured to have a minimum 10-hour day, which was not an issue. The issue came from never actually really working a 10-hour day. The average length of my shift was from 11 to 13 hours. And every time it goes past even that 8-hour shift to begin with, that's time eating into the things that I want to do. Time that I'm losing that I can spend outside of work pursuing my own passions, pursuing my own hobbies, and living my life. This ultimately became unsustainable for me as an individual, where this channel sat here collecting dust I started the year very strong, where I was drawing once a day, I was reading books, but then because of the amount of work and the time that was being requested to dedicate to it, I went months without drawing, painting, writing, doing photography, anything artistic, anything to like improve my own quality of life. I wasn't doing anymore. And this went beyond that, where my own personal health, my own personal well-being was then put in jeopardy because of the work, where I wasn't able to go to the gym because after working a 12-hour day, I'd be too tired. I wasn't able to spend as much time with my family, with my girlfriend. I wasn't able to spend as much time working on projects that I actively was really passionate about because of the time commitment that was being asked of me. And as a salaried employee, that was something that I expected to come into play, but I didn't expect it to be the severity that was being imposed upon me. And that was one of the main reasons that I chose to leave my job. It's because I wanted to reclaim my time, knowing I couldn't get any more of it. Reason number 2, leadership. And this is a word that invokes certain feelings or certain memories for different individuals. You can have good examples of leaders who worked hard to build you up, to support you. Maybe you had a coach that was really transformative in your time as an athlete. Maybe you had a shift lead who really went out of their way to get to know you as an individual and did everything they could to support you. These are some examples of like good leads who are actively going out of their way, being mindful of themselves and their team, building them up. And on the flip side of that, you have plenty of examples of bad leads too. Maybe you had a project leader who took credit for your work, who expected you just to pull your weight and theirs and never shared any of the credit. Or maybe you had a lead who feigned a lot of sympathy or empathy, where they would say one thing and act as if they were being very caring towards their whole group or towards a certain individual, but then turn around and do something completely opposite of that. So examples of those who aren't taking into consideration the team they're working with, the team that without them won't get any projects done. This is my opinion, but leadership is a very hard skill to develop, but it's not an impossible one for anybody, even if there are those who are introverts that are worried about stepping outside their comfort zone, or extroverts who are worried about reeling it in and looking at the other individuals around them. Gary Vaynerchuk puts it into perspective very well, where in one of his speeches, he focuses on 3 main aspects, but it's categorized a little bit differently than you would normally think. While the best example I have is in retail, where it was customer first and foremost, that placed a lot of pressure on my team and myself as a lead to be able to go through and say, hey, this is what I need to do in the best interest of my team, when our boss would be so focused on the numbers, so focused on the metric. It was, well, do this in spite of what your team is doing, or do this in spite of the circumstance. Gary Vaynerchuk's approach is very different because it is then place the team first. If you are taking care of your team, you are taking care of their needs, and you are making sure that they can work to the best of their ability, then it comes to the customer, because then at that point your team can provide them with the service, provide them with the product, provide them with the opportunity that's needed, and to their best capacity. And then you are third. So the lead, the person who's trying to run the show, is the third individual to which the concern will fall to. And I like that approach because I want to put the team, or I want to put my team first and foremost, because especially in retail, if you have worked retail in the past, let me know in the comments. It can be draining to know that you have individuals who have the entitlement to say, this is exactly what's going to happen because I'm a customer coming in here, versus, hey, I'm going to stand by my team because they don't have the time, or there's too much being asked of them with too little resources to get the project done. And these are very important differences that under my last job, it was too enforced to just be metric driven, to just go for the result and at the expense of the team in place. And that was the second reason that I chose to leave. Reason number 3. Mindfulness and fulfillment. Now, actually, for me, this is the one that was kind of the big catalyst, and for me, it's ultimately quite simple. What I was doing wasn't fulfilling. I spent the past 3 years diving into mindfulness, diving into where do I want to go in life and what do I want to do. Having that insight was super beneficial for me to then say, this job is not fulfilling what I want to do, where I want to go, and it's not gonna help me reach those eventual goals. Compounding on top of not having enough time in the day to reach those goals, and compound on top of leadership that I would never wish to emulate or to develop under, that was the big catalyst where I decided this is the leap that I need to take. Because if I'm going to reach the future that I want, I'm gonna have to take control of that and do it on my own, or at least take that leap and do it in a platform in a way that allows me that freedom and that fulfillment to find the future that I want. And so now here I am once again in front of the camera talking to all you guys. because speaking, presenting, and learning alongside all of you is something that is very fulfilling for me. There is so much information out in the world, so much to do out in the world, that spending 12 hours a day in a fluorescent lit building where I was only ever working to a metric was not something I wanted to do. It wasn't fulfilling, but this is something that I believe and feel is for me. And now, while most people will tend to work on their side hustles or their side business while they still have their 9-to-5 jobs, that is the usual route, or the one that you often hear most of, is they work on it until that side business produced enough income to cover their expenses, and it gave them that safety net to safely and comfortably jump from their main job into their side hustle and make that their main focus and their main career. But for me, like I said, I skipped a couple steps here, but here's why I felt comfortable doing so. Bonus reason number 4. So for me, I actually checked off the large safety net box for my own little escape plan before I actively chose to put in my 2 weeks, which was I have my emergency fund set up. But on top of that, I had the recommended 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up as well. And for me, that was one of the other pieces of the puzzle that I needed in place to know that I was going to be okay quitting my job, where often I would recommend that if you are looking to transition jobs, looking to transition careers, that you look for those opportunities beforehand. Try to line up those interviews, try to line up those offers before you quit your actual job, because then it's essentially bridging you from one opportunity to the next one. But for me, I decided that focusing on the security that comes from having that emergency fund and having those expenses saved up, that I'd be okay taking this leap. Even though there's a lot less stability to it, there's a lot less security in the actual process itself, it was something that I deemed I'd be willing to do, even at the expense of some comfort. That was what I ultimately decided was the option I wanted to go. Because having that emergency fund and those savings lined up will always be a bigger sense of security, and having a clear goal in mind for what you want to actively do next and why is going to be very fundamental in choosing your next steps and what your next journey is going to be, essentially. Now, I'm just a guy on the internet, and ultimately I want to bring this all back to the idea of the personal journey. So there'll be risk in so many things that you're going to do throughout life, so plan accordingly. But don't ever let those things be what holds you back from pursuing something you're passionate about, something that you actively know is going to put you in the spot you want to be later in life. So always plan, adjust, and prepare and move forward, because knowing that if you are planning, you're taking into account the factors that you need to, that you are being mindful about what you are actively pursuing, and you're planning for these. You're planning for the ups and downs, you're preparing for them, then the best thing you can do at that point is press on. We all have a journey to go on, and there's going to be plenty of ups and downs along the way. While it's definitely going to be hard at times, life for me is all about keeping perspective, to be fulfilled personally, as well as doing and finding things that I love to pursue. And I want to see that for all you guys as well out there. So with that, thank you very much for watching this video, and come along with me on this journey. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video, or if any of the thoughts that I had resonated with you personally. Comment down below if there's any funny stories you guys have about quitting your job, but then also, what were some things that you put in place that made you feel confident about being ready to jump ship or being ready to launch into a new career or a new job? Leave it down below. Please be sure you follow me on KES Studios on Instagram. Feel free to shoot me a message, leave comments. I would love to respond to you guys. I want to connect with you more as we go through and figure out what these next steps look like and where this journey is ultimately going to take us. And keeping everything simple, I'll see you guys next time.